I was going to PS 113 in Queens, New York, and behind it was a row of houses. There was a guy there. He used to come out. A guy named David. He used to come out and play with the guys, and he was an older gentleman. And he was like, "Man, you want to come in the garage and look at my cars?" I had some AFX cars. At that time, that's when AFX tracks were really prevalent. Being naive, 6 years old, I don't know any better, I don't understand anything. I followed him on the allure of toys. And when we got there, we snuck in. And I always knew from that point on that something wasn't right. My name is Neal Knight, Neal, Knight. I'm originally from New York, raised in Queens. Didn't know my father, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and aunt. Household of women, caring, understanding, giving, nurturing. But being an only boy, being an only child, no other siblings, I was separate. Loving, but separate. Set apart. Lost. Still fighting. And had a great fight to get to where I stand today. As a child, growing up in Queens, in New York, we were poverty-stricken. Very difficult because didn't have anything. All that we did have, it wasn't ours. So I close my eyes and try to think back. And sometimes the memories elude me because that was one of the darkest times of my life. I wish I could go back from 1 to 5 and I'd be fine. That was the funnest time of my life because I was free. I had friends. My grandmother, Elizabeth Knight, was the president of the Leather Garment Union. And we would go to different communities when I would have to go with her to Chinatown or to Little Italy. I learned different cultures. I had different friends from different ethnic backgrounds and different colors. And there was no barriers or no hindrance or no racist mentalities running around us children at that time. So from 0 to 5, I was at peace because I had friends in every color, shape, size, nation, dialect, tongue. Yes, that was my fun time. But after 5, things just turned completely to the left, we'll say. At the age of 6, I was molested for the first time. I was going to PS 113 in Queens, New York, and behind it was a row of houses. There was a guy there. He used to come out. A guy named David. He used to come out and play with the guys, and he was an older gentleman. And he was like, "Man, you want to come in the garage and look at my cars?" I had some AFX cars. At that time, that's when AFX tracks were really prevalent. And being naive, 6 years old, I don't know any better, I don't understand anything. I followed him. on the allure of toys. And when we got there, we snuck in. And I always knew from that point on that something wasn't right. But I didn't understand it at that point. And he would just, start off with simple stuff, grab your shoulder, massage your shoulders, and from one thing to the next thing, from the next thing to on. And then that fear set in. I would dread going to school every day. I wouldn't want to go. I wouldn't want my mom to leave me. And not being able to express or talk, it created a different silence that sometimes I don't even know if I can explain it. I became a recluse. I didn't have any relationship with friends. And if I did, I didn't play in the same free, jovial mentality or practices that I did before 6. There was a restriction. There was a closet that I hid in that I didn't want people to open the door to. So I didn't have the same freeness of laughter and play. That was a thing in the past. One thing we should understand is that my mother was a child when she had me. She had me at 15. So when I was 6, she was 21. So she was still learning how to be a mother. In addition to trying to still be a young lady, a young woman. So her sex scale was off the meters, because at 21 she's basically in her prime, and she has this bundle with her, me. So I don't know how to. The only thing I can say is this, I should say. She couldn't be a parent because she was learning, we were learning together.
One of the things that I realized about Neal is, first of all, the courage that it takes to be able to express himself and the traumas that he's experienced as a man. I think we are intimately aware of the fact that for most guys, for most dudes, it is very, very difficult to become vulnerable, to become transparent, and to really face the realities of what has happened, what is happening, and what potentially will happen in the future as a result of past trauma. And so I want to celebrate Neal for his courage to be able to take head on and confront the realities of the things that have happened in his life and the ways in which he has shown up in life as a result of those experiences. I also noticed, though, and you guys will catch this as well, I also noticed he finds it disrespectful and somewhat dishonorable for him to have anything to say about his mother and her behaviors, actions, mindsets when he was a child, right? And being able to find, I see that he is attempting to find and navigate the tensions that exist between honoring and respecting the fact that his mother was incredibly young in raising him and not necessarily having all of the tools necessary in order to raise him properly. And at the same time, acknowledging the pain and trauma that comes along with her unwillingness or inability to even get the tools necessary for her to be the kind of parent that she ultimately needed to be. So he finds a real difficult tension between the two. And so he errs on the side of respect. He errs on the side of protecting the image and the name of his mom, because as men, that's what we do, right? We are taught not just by our family members and friends, but by a society that says that if another dude hurts you or harms you, it's okay. But if a sister hurts or harms you, don't you even acknowledge that pain. Don't even acknowledge that trauma. Don't even acknowledge that challenge, particularly if that challenge is a result of pain that mom has caused. And so what you see in Neal is his caution in being able to say that my mom hurt me and that the pain that she caused me is incredibly real. So what he does is just decide, you know what, it's real, but what is more real in my mind, and this is Neal talking, right? What Neal says, what is more real is the fact that she did the best she could with what she had. And I want to celebrate her, at least her attempt to be the kind of mom, even at a young age, I want to celebrate her attempt to be the kind of mom that she was.
At the age of 9, I was molested for a second time by a different person, and the world was dark to me. I didn't understand what peace was. I didn't know what happiness was, because in those years when I should have been happy, I was angry. Being an only child, you have nobody else to talk to. And those things have a tendency to close closet doors and put locks on them. That was the most difficult thing, I believe, in my childhood, was those doors that were closed. They just didn't close, they were locked. And I had to fight to get them open. You know, things seem innocent. But I knew it. I had already seen it. It was like it was drawn to me. It was like this was my world. How these predators, I don't know how they, I don't know if they have this sick, demented mind to find children or individuals who are vulnerable to their sickness. But that was a molestation of opportunity, because there's nowhere I could go in my own home. There was nowhere to run to. And I still had that same mentality of believing that my closet, my darkness was my best friend, and my silence was my friend. So I walked in it. But I learned how to hate it even more. Watching TV and just felt the hand on my leg. Simple. It's like if you don't say anything, then it's like it gives them a green light. And not knowing how to scream, all my silent screaming was in me. I didn't know how to deflect it, didn't know how to defend myself. one thing I've gotten away from, I stopped crying because I stopped giving them power. I pray for them every day. I pray that God gives them a direction for somebody to help them, because I know that it's a sickness. I know that they need help. And I refuse to give them that power over me. So, in my own strange and absurd way, I believe my tears give them power. I refuse to give them power over me. I've taken that power back. That's just who I am, and that's just how I deal with this now. I did all my crying, and I did all the shedding of my tears, and allowing somebody to have that strength and that power over me, and I took it back.
You'll notice that Neal continues to say that he is taking back power of his life, right? That he is taking back power of his life, that he would not allow the traumatic experiences of his past to own him, right? That he would take back power with his life, but he does so by an unwillingness to cry, right? So what he says is, I'm all cried out. I've dealt with my crying phase. I needed to take power back of my life. When in fact, the truth of the matter is, what most brothers don't realize is that there is power in the release. There's power in the expression. That emotional intelligence is the capacity, this expanded capacity to be aware of my emotions, to control my emotions, and then to express my emotions to self, to others, about what I'm feeling. So what most guys think is that when we express ourselves in any vulnerable way, when we express ourselves in any way that is healthy, with regard to transparency and authenticity, that is a sign of weakness. That is a sign in Neal's case, in his mind, a sign of powerlessness. So I would much rather feel powerful than to actually be powerful, because to be powerful requires that I have a continual confrontation of the trauma and challenges of my life, and that if they cause me pain, and they are continual cause of pain, I don't shove them under the rug. I continually confront them with strength and with courage, so that my life can ultimately be better. There is no healing in suggesting all of a sudden that I'm going to stop crying. There's no healing in that. And so I see Neal's struggle, his ongoing struggle and evolution, right? Because he does get to a place where he says, you know what, I'm cried out with this. Let me do something different. And I think that's to be celebrated, but it is also a point of awareness to recognize that at some point you've got to acknowledge, particularly if there's a continued pain based on the trauma, or what we call inside remain soul punches, right? There's been a soul punch that has bruised my soul, my mind, my will, my emotions, my intellect, my imagination. It has bruised that. And what I'm attempting to do now is to navigate that bruise, because when I continue to touch it, it continues to hurt. And what I decide to do is I'm not going to cry even though it hurts. I'm just going to deal with it like a man. Dealing with it like a man requires that we have the capacity for full expression of the things that hurt us, so that we can confront them and ultimately get over them, but we don't want to get over them too quickly.
From the age of 9 to the age of 17, I lost my aunt. At the age of 12, she died of a heart attack in our home. At the age of 13, I lost my great-grandmother in a fire, which was my heart. 70 years separated us. And I believe that was the final straw that created this dislike for myself. I didn't care about life. At one point in time, I wish I would have been dead. And although I never tried to commit suicide, one of the things that I did do, I always put myself in harm's way, hoping somebody else would kill me. And it seems like the only one who understood me was a blind old lady that was bedridden, who died of fire. For what senses she lost in seeing, she understood in spirit. She seen past all the pain and all the ugliness, and I would lay my head on her lap and she would express to me those things that I didn't even know existed in me. So when she passed, the world became nothing to me. And I sought to be killed. I sought to do wrong. I sought to fight for all the darkness, because that darkness became my friend. At the age of 17, going into 18, I received my first prison sentence. I went to Rikers Island, Elmira, Fishkill, downstate in the New York system. Did 4 years on a 7-year sentence for robbery. Man, look, I would snatch chains, I would take cars, I would strong arm rob people, I would put pistols in people's face. I did a lot of stuff that, if I got caught for all the stuff I did, I probably would have had a natural life sentence. And I believe the judge here in Virginia, if he could have gave me more time, he'd have gave it to me, just like the judge in New York, if they could have. They just, what I realize is this, that they don't see the creation of these monsters. They just see the results of them. They don't know what built this anger and hate and this darkness and this dislike for life. They just see the end results of what you become and how you're acting. And then they judge you based on that. But I can't be mad. One thing I've learned in all these years is that I don't get mad at them because of them doing their job, because they have a responsibility to also protect. And most of the time they have to protect members of society against people like me. Once you can accept that about who you are and what you do and what you've done, and know that I wouldn't change a thing, because if I did, I'd have died not knowing Christ. More importantly, through all this, my mother found a relationship. She found herself walking to Christ and building a relationship with him. So both of us would have probably died not knowing Christ. So would I change anything? No. But do I regret? Yes. I regret that I allowed my silence to be my fuel for hate. And if there was anything that I want to change, I would change the fact that I would have spoke up. But other than that, I wouldn't change anything, because prison probably was the best thing for me. It really was. And I know some people never want to admit that, but it was the best thing for me, because it trained me to be. I was released at the age of 21, stayed out, met my wife, had a daughter. She was born premature, 6 months, and her lungs had tears in them. She was on a breathing machine. She never, they had already told us that even if she lived, she'd be a vegetable. Because without the breathing apparatuses that they had on her, she wouldn't get any oxygen to her brain. So she would pretty much be a vegetable. And if she did do anything, she would be retarded. Don't want to hear that. Wow. At that point, I just simply believed that There was no right way for me to do anything. Everything I touched turned to darkness. And the only bright thing that I thought I had would be that child that would walk me through some of these pains. But I knew that God knew better. I know that now. I didn't know that then. I know that now. That he knew better. He knew what I really needed, and I didn't need a child in my life because that wasn't going to make me whole. That was just going to make me more upset. I probably would have been an abusive father, neglect, and a whole host of things that probably wouldn't have been right. And I can admit that because I didn't understand life. I didn't understand peace. I didn't understand who I was. All I knew was I hated everything. At the age of 28, I came to Virginia because I thought I would change my environment. It would change my mentality, or it would change my footsteps in the direction that I was walking. But all it was a distraction from my ugliness and my darkness. I received a 55-year sentence for robbery, abduction, a host of things that wasn't fair. And I can't express how much I almost bought into what that judge told me when he sentenced me. He said, "You're a career criminal and you'll never amount to anything. And this is why I'm giving you so much time, because it's my intent that you die in that prison." And I became comfortable with that. I did 27 years straight. And in that time, I was quite vicious. I went through Elmira. Well, in Virginia, I went through Red Onion, Wallen Ridge, Sussex 1, Sussex 2, Sussex 3, Greensville, Nottoway twice, Augusta, Lawrenceville, Bland, State Farm. No institution would accept me because they deemed me a threat to the security of the institution. So they would put me on a transfer list and just keep me moving until they built their supermaxes, and that's where they sat me. And I became accustomed to hate until I met one woman. Her name was Miriam. She was a correctional officer. And one day she had that same spiritual insight as my grandmother had. She said, "What's wrong?" And she did something that most officers are trained not to do. She hugged me. See, I didn't understand how much that hug meant. But that hug broke the defenses of being separate from life. It shattered those hardened exteriors that I had created and all these faces that I put on. Just that simple hug and somebody caring enough to say what's wrong gave me an opportunity to tell somebody for the first time that I was molested. Because all those years I carried it with me and I didn't know how to release it. And every time I did release it, I released it in a negative way. I released it in a way that was inappropriate, wasn't fair to society. It wasn't fair to my family. It wasn't fair to the victim's family. It wasn't fair to the Spirit of God that He placed in all of us, whether we invoke it or tap into it. It wasn't fair. One officer, with an act that could have taken her job, hugged me and asked me what was wrong. Hugged, yes. Loved in that hug, or felt the passion of a parent hugging their child? No. I believe there wasn't the genuineness of that hug that said, everything will be all right. Because I was born in an age where parents say, I don't want to hear you. Go and just play. Better to be seen than to be heard. So by not being heard, I believe that my peace was my darkness. Well, why my mom's story is I was raised by a child who didn't know how to be a mother and didn't put forth the effort to learn how to be a mother. What she understood was that I was a distraction to her game plan. She wanted to live her life and do what she wanted to do. And now, did she hate me? No, she didn't. She showed love the way she knew how to show love. And is that right? Was it wrong? It's not for me to say, because she had to do what she believed was right. And a lot of times it might not have been. But when you learn it on the fly, who's to tell you that it's wrong? Yes, I've forgiven everybody that may have or has put in or created these closets and faces that I put on to be hateful and angry. I've learned how to do that over years of being behind a prison wall, and it took that learning how to forgive. Yes, I've forgiven 100%. I was mad that I didn't have an opportunity to hug her before she passed. They were in New York, I was in Virginia. So the last time I actually hugged my mother was 1989. I walked out of prison in 2018.
Thirdly, I want to acknowledge the fact that one of the most powerful quotes that I've ever heard is by Tony Robbins. Now, I don't know whether or not it's a Tony Robbins quote or whether he got it from someone else, but it is an incredibly powerful quote. Here's the quote: that if I heal the boy, the man will emerge. If I heal the boy, the man will emerge. So you'll recognize that Neal dealt with trauma beginning at the age of 6 and then again at the age of 9. And both of those traumatic experiences, usually what happens at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, are shaping forces of how I will interact with the rest of the world, how I will interact with myself, how I will interact with intimate relationships from that point on. And so what Tony Robbins says, or whoever says the quote, right, what they say is absolutely true, that if I can go back and if I can heal that boy, the boy that experienced those things, then the man in me, the mature man in me will emerge. But he will never emerge unless I go back and face the little boy, unless I heal the little boy. And so there's a lot of work that has been done by Neal, but needs to also continually be done by Neal to really confront the little boy that feels like he should have done something, he should have said something, he should have hollered, which is ultimately the struggle for many people who have been abused, particularly men. Again, that's why I celebrate the courage of Neal, because he puts it out on the line and says, yes, I was violated by family, I was violated by friends, and at the end of the day, he continues to both become aware. Again, remember, emotional intelligence, the capacity to be aware, to control, and to express my emotions about what has happened to me. But I've got to be aware of them to be able to heal them. And so going back and really addressing the things that he has dealt with, and particularly as a little boy, that he has carried over into being a man. So it is possible for him to rely on reputation. One of the things that you've noticed is that he said that when he went to jail, when he went to prison, that at the end of the day, people that were in jail, people that were in prison, even though he was let out, went back, that those people had an understanding of his reputation, right? Because when we are little boys, our reputation is what we rely on in order for people to be afraid of us, have respect for us, or what have you. And so healing the little boy will allow him, and the continual confrontation of that, I have to continue to say that, right? The continual confrontation of the little boy will continue to cause him to be healthy and to grow and to evolve as a man in such a way that he can be a full man every single day, because he's dealt with the little boy and the little boy's need to continue to violate because he's been violated, to continue to be angry because someone was angry with him, to continue to give excuse because someone gave excuse when they violated him. There is a cycle that has been created, and that cycle has been interrupted now that Neal is evolving and really addressing the things that he has dealt with. I am super proud of Neal and the work that he has done. There's still some work to be done. Some things that I heard that there are still work to be done, but those are the three things that I saw and have seen in Neal that I recognize are not just pain points, but promise points and purpose points that'll take him to the place where he is ultimately supposed to be.
I believe the impact of my mother's relationship with me concerning other relationships that I got into, it really was devastating, because all I was taught was to be, I wasn't taught to love. I was taught to be quiet, be a child, not how to build a bank account or how to hug somebody and just say, I love you, how to pray with them. I didn't learn from her any of the things that would have been the tools for me to be successful in life. And by her not seeing or being observant enough to see the pains and sufferings that I was screaming silently for or screaming silently out, I picked up her character traits of distancing and non-forgiving and being standoffish, but loving, but being standoffish. So that taught me in my relationships that I couldn't fully trust people. I couldn't open up and give them all of me because I never saw it. I never experienced what giving unconditional love was. I believe my trauma made me a better parent. I built such a strong relationship with my child behind a prison wall that when I walked out, she told me, she said, you know, I got every letter you ever wrote me pinned on my wall. To make it even more so, at that time, which my wife and I were getting divorced, but she had a child by another gentleman while I was in prison. And Marcus is my son. He asked me while I was in prison, he said, you mind if I call you Dad? I always believed that I had to stop my mother because she would do things for Stephanie, but she wouldn't do it for Marcus. And my grandmother told me, she said, you don't create a division between your children. So I had to stop her. If you're not going to buy nothing from him, you don't buy nothing for her. Period. And if I got to tell Lynn that every time you buy something for Stephanie, you send it back to her until she buys something for Marcus, don't do nothing. So I tried to make it a point that every time I sent her something, I sent him something. Not because I wanted him to want to be his father in that sense, but I always believed that when you create a division between children, when we're dead and gone, they're still going to be brother and sister. So I think in her absence and me being incarcerated showed me how to be a good parent, because I wanted a relationship with my child that I couldn't have. And that's probably why I'm a good grandfather right now. I met a gentleman in the county jail named Richard Enrique. He was the guy that used to come through when I was still fighting my cases. Because when I was fighting my cases, I was facing 2 natural life sentences, which meant that I was definitely going to die in prison. They were trying to make me a persistent felon because I had went to prison in New York and I committed so many crimes down in Virginia. They tried to make me a persistent, which means that you have 3 felonies of the same offense, which automatically makes you a candidate for life. Richard Enrique, every Friday he would come around in the county jail, and he would run a little church service. He'd ask people, you want to come to church today? Want to come to church, man? Just having a little service. Ain't nobody twist you. You can. If you do, I'll get off, so open your door. And every week I tell him, man, get away from my door, man. I don't hear about that old Jesus stuff. Get on my door, man. What's wrong with you? You talking about some Jesus stuff, man. Go get me a cigarette. That's what I need right now. I don't need no Jesus. Get me a cigarette. And one Friday we was on lockdown. They were doing shakedowns in another part because somebody had found some illegal items. We won't say what they were, but they shut the institution down. And they were shaking that part down, and most of the officers was in that part shaking down. But they still allowed his service to go on, because one thing that prison had gotten to, they wouldn't stop religious services. So that part that it was shaking down was the only part that was excluded from going to the service. And because we was locked in a cell, we couldn't do nothing. I couldn't take a shower. I couldn't do nothing. Shucks. You want to go to church? Yeah, come on, man. Sign me up, man. I got to get out this cell. And he was the one who introduced me to Christ. I already knew Christ. Through my grandmother, I was an altar boy. I was an acolyte. I did all that stuff, but I didn't have a relationship with Christ. They had a relationship. See, I didn't come to Christ because I wanted to come to him. I was baptized and became all this stuff in the church because that pleased my grandmother, that pleased my family, but I didn't have a relationship with Christ. My relationship came when I was in prison through Richard. And he said something so profound. And I say it to this day, and I mean it. He says, he who stands in the face of adversity gains wisdom in the Lord thy God. You stand in this prison. If there's any adversity that's greater than this right now, you're standing here, you don't even know how much time you're going to get, because you haven't even been sentenced for your offenses. You don't know what you're going to do. If that's not a great adversity that you have to face, then there is no greater adversity in the world. And we all need to lay down and just let it go. But if you trust, believe, and know that there's a God who created a Christ who came and died for you, hey, you locked up, but you free. Because can't nobody take your spirit from you. He bought me a Bible, a New Living Bible, and signed it. It was signed March 23rd, 1993, to my friend Neal. And I still have that Bible. That was one of the things I brought home with me, that Bible. All I can say is thank you. Thank you for being the best you could be, not knowing who you were, or what was to do, or I'm not going to give you any advice. You don't deserve to be spoke down to. You deserve to be lifted up, because you had a harder fight than I did raising me. First thing, most important thing, get on your knees God understands a penitent man. And penitent means that you come to him bowed. That's the first thing, man. Whoever, whether it be a sister and a sister or be a brother and a sister, you got to get on your knees. Secondly, talk. Get it out. Open that closet door. As difficult as it is, you got to open that door. And once you open that door, you got to open the one behind it. Because what we have as a society been taught is that there's only one door. There's never just one door. You have multiple doors that you have to crack open and walk through. First, fall on your knees. Second, open these doors. Third, talk. Find somebody, a counselor, an officer, somebody that you can open your heart up to and not feel like you're going to be judged, and talk. Because the sooner you get it out your system, the sooner you start to heal. And the sooner you start to heal, the sooner you start to teach. Because you give that message to somebody else. See, our experiences in life are not for us. They're for us to give away. But sometimes you just have to face those adversities. Those words from Richard. He who stands in the face of adversity gains wisdom in the Lord thy God. Give that away. Don't keep it. Because somebody needs to hear it. Parents, and just not your parents, but your aunts and your uncles and your neighbors. When you see a child that draws back, when certain people walk in the room, all day long they've been playing, and then somebody comes over and they're quiet, that's not the time to tell that child to go in the room and be quiet or get out my face. That's the time to ask a question. Why did you get quiet? Why are you not playing anymore? What's wrong? We have to be attentive to our children and see their silent cries, because what they don't say with their mouths, their body is always going to tell you. That is a fact. Their bodies will tell you that something is wrong. Pay attention to your children. Pay attention to your neighbor's children. Pay attention to your cousin and your nephew and your niece. Pay attention to them. Be open enough that they can feel comfortable telling you anything. Please. Because what they don't say out their mouth, their actions are going to be shown through their bodies. This is not the time to be quiet. This is the time to ask questions. What makes me happy now? Tony. Because she cares. She doesn't, not one time has she ever judged me. Not once. Even when I fought, she fought with her family for me. That's what makes me happy. Christ. That's without question. Ain't no ifs and buts about that. God got to be number one. But people, my children, my grandchildren. This is my 3-year anniversary. I was released on August 14th, 2018. And I've been home 3 years. 3 years I walked out and didn't have any credit. I didn't have anything. I have a 760 credit score. And you know, the Lord has been working with me. They diagnosed me with stage 4 lung cancer. In 2015, I went from 260 pounds to 190 pounds in 32 days. They sent a priest in my room and asked me, did I have my affairs in order? And I received 2 angels, Teresa and Eunice, my 2 nurses. And they were the ones who came to me and said, look, if God didn't call for you, don't let nobody push you. I refused to let anybody push me until he called for me. Because when he called, I'm gone. And I ain't got no losing situation. So, that being said, my last CT scan I had a month and a half ago. When they diagnosed me in stage 4, I had a 7-centimeter mass in my right lung. My upper right lung was collapsing. I had spots on my breastplate, on my spleen, on my liver. I had a tumor on my vocal cords where I couldn't even talk. They had it separated. Spots going up the back of my brain and spots on my hip. My last CT scan shows that all I have left now is a mass in my right lung. And I refuse to sit down. So I know God is good, and I know he's strong, and I know I got a tangible God that I can put my hands on. See, I don't have a God that's eerie and just floating around. No. Sometimes he come on down here and he put his hands around you. Because I know there's been many days I woke up in that prison and I knew somebody had wrapped me in their arms when I was sleeping in that bed. So I know I serve a God that he ain't no weekend God. He here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. He picks me up and carries me through some perils because I know I should have been dead a long time ago. But he seen fit to walk me past it. So I stand on his word. I stand on his grace. I stand on his beauty. I stand on his love. I thank him for blessing me and keeping me and holding me and sustaining me and picking me up and making sure that I became a Jacob. Because I am that Jacob. I refuse to let you go, Lord, until you bless me. See, that's my Jacob. I refuse to let you go until you bless me. That's what Jacob did. That's what I do. I refuse to let you go, God, till you bless me. There's been so many things that held us down, but now it looks like things are finally coming around. I know we got a long, long way to go, and where we end up, I don't know. But we won't let nothing hold us back. We're getting ourselves together. We're polishing up our act, girl. And if you ever been held down before, I know I need some of that water because my throat is dry, Q.
Don't you let nothing stand in your way. I want y'all to listen to every word I say, every word I say. Ain't no stopping us now. No. We're moving, we're grooving. Ain't no stopping us now. We're moving, yeah. We're grooving. Moving. Ain't no stopping us now. We're on the move. I know.